So, if you've been inspired by my videos where I am raising most of my chickens without antibiotics and you would love to try that for yourself, then this video is for you. However, I created this video to show you a few exceptions where antibiotics are used. In most cases, you are not going to raise chickens without antibiotics throughout your entire year. There are cases where you receive chicks that are diseased already, and from a moral and an animal welfare point of view, it is allowed legally that you give them treatment. Usually these chicks which come in showing multiple signs of different diseases are from flawed eggs. These are eggs that were collected from the floor. These are eggs that had been contaminated and they were disinfected, but that was not effective because the eggs breathe, and before they were disinfected and placed into the setters, the bacteria had their way into the eggs. So when this happens and these chicks from flawed eggs arrive your farm, they are going to show multiple signs and symptoms of different diseases because they have been affected by different forms of bacteria. So when you have this, it becomes very important that you grant them a treatment. This is because these multiple symptoms of diseases are usually associated with high mortalities. You're going to lose a lot of chicks, and it's not morally correct, and from the animal welfare point of view, it's equally not allowed that you leave whole flocks to be swept out by a disease, or that you allow chicks of a whole flock to be killed by such a situation. So from the animal welfare point of view and from a moral point of view, it's allowed that you treat them. However, they must not be recorded as antibiotic free for that particular flock or for that particular batch, in case all your birds on the farm came from the same source. The situation usually is so bad that if the protocol was not followed from the laying farms and these contaminated eggs got into the setters, they start exploding in the setters. That is, most of the eggs in the first place never progress to the point where they become chicks. So you see how the problem comes into the farmers. So that's what happens when you receive chicks showing multiple symptoms of diseases within the first 3 days with very high mortality. So when this happens, what should you do? You should administer a broad spectrum antibiotics. When you administer a broad spectrum antibiotic, it's able to clear most of these bacteria in the guts of the chicks. The chicks have these bacteria in the guts as a result of residual yolk sacs that are coming from the eggs where they were brought from. So that is the source of the problem. So you have to give them a treatment even if you are raising chickens without antibiotics. And like I said before, once a batch is identified as such, you have to make it clear to whoever the officials regulating your farms are that this particular batch or this particular flock is not antibiotic free. That information has to go to the public, to the final consumer. He or she has to understand what they are consuming, whether antibiotics were used and whether they were not used. You must be transparent with that information. Also, it is very, very important that the transparency between the farmers and the hatchery is top quality, because in events where we have such batches of chicks, let's say for example, they experience these cases of explosion in the setters where most of the chicks are contaminated because they are coming from contaminated eggs. That information should be passed on to the farmer. And on the side of the farmer, you are supposed to handle such a flock with utmost care. You have to know when to respond, how to respond, and how fast to respond, because this information gives you an added advantage. Within the first week, if you see anything that is abnormal, you can react timely in order to save the flock. This is why I insist all the time that it is important to have this transparency between the hatchery and the farmer. Same thing. There should be transparency between the parent stock farm where the eggs are collected and the hatchery. If there was a delay, if the eggs were not properly managed, the hatchery should be informed so that this information is passed down to the farmer. So, as a farmer, once you've received such chicks, like I said before, you have limited options, and it's morally wrong, and from the animal welfare point of view, it's also very wrong to allow whole flocks to be killed or damaged by a single mistake that came from the hatchery or from the parent stock farm. In such cases, it is highly advised that the birds be granted a treatment so that the chicks can be treated on time of whatever disease or pathogens they came in contact with or were contaminated with while in the process of incubation. So those are some exceptions. So the take-home message is this: prevention remains the most effective way of raising chicks without antibiotics. That's why if you are a keen follower of this channel, you will know that from the time when we take out the previous batch until when we have new chicks, we do a lot of sanitation. There is a lot of biosecurity measures put in place just to make sure that we are not exposing these chicks to any form of disease or whatever. So it is very important to prevent. So while you have cleaned your farm, disinfected, and make sure that the environment is safe for your chicks, it is also very important to communicate with the hatchery to get the right information that will enable you to raise these birds in the conditions and standards that you want. So this is how to manage flocks without using antibiotics. It boils down to how much information you have and what you do with that information. In most cases, on my farm, I do raise a few flocks with antibiotics. That is based on the quality of the chicks that are coming in, which is also dependent on the quality of the eggs that went into the incubator. So it's not directly from me, but I have to manage them in a way that entire flocks are not destroyed. Why the majority, most of the time, 8 out of 10 flocks that we raise will be free from antibiotics. So this is the mindset we should all have. It is not a do or die affair. I am not asking farmers to allow birds die unnecessarily simply because they feel they want to go without antibiotics. It is good if you can maintain the standards and the qualities and every other measure that is required to keep them safe from disease in the first place. That will be the best thing to do. However, if you ever find yourself in a situation where your birds are diseased and they need treatment, you have to treat them. It is only recommended that these treatments should be recommended by a veterinary doctor, and whatever treatment you administer should follow the producer's guidelines and should also be based on the veterinary doctor's recommendations. So, to continue learning more about raising chickens and how you can better your farming, you can subscribe to this channel and check out our other videos.